What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast pre-game NFL Draft Show for the second night of the 2022 NFL Draft. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is, of course, Friday, April 29th. I'm not sure why I even need to look at my phone to figure out that date. This is not part of the podcast, but we are hanging on YouTube, and we've got a crew to discuss draft rumors, prop bets, all kinds of stuff you need to know for rounds 2 and 3 of the 2022 NFL Draft. No, we don't have the fountains from the Bellagio cascading magnificently behind us, but, you know, we're still good looking and whatnot. Joining me to break it down, we're going 5 wide for the hour leading up to the draft. Josh Edwards, John Breach, Chris Trapasso, and Emery Hunt. What is happening, fellas?
We need a few more people on here, and we get the whole Brady Bunch feel. With the windows or the Hollywood Squares, like we talked about.
I can barely see Brinson all the way over there.
That's right. I know you're so far across the room. Let's go through this real quick. We'll hit this off the top. We'll start with Josh. Go in the order. You're sort of the 5 wide here. You were at 33. Ignore team needs. You can take anybody you want. Who's your best player available?
Man, we come out swinging. I will go with Georgia wide receiver George Pickens because I value him as a day one player. I don't know about the reported immaturity concerns that teams may have with him. All I know is that he's a good football player that suffered a torn ACL in March and decided to return to his team in November when he did not need to. I mean, that tells me enough about what he means to his football team, and that's going to be enough for me to take a chance on the type of talent that he brings to the field.
Am I next?
You are.
I'll go with Nakobe Dean. I thought for sure if we were going to see 5 UGA players drafted in the first round that he would have been one of them. Clearly was not. Slipped to the second round, and I think that sets up, you talk about steals all the time. If he's taken the first round, it's not a steal, but you get someone like him in the second round, that's when it can become a steal, and I think we'll see him go off the board pretty early.
One of my top 2 players available would either be Roger McCreary or Andrew Booth, the corners from Auburn and Clemson, respectively. If Roger McCreary had, I think, even 30.5-inch arms instead of 29-inch arms, we'd be talking about him not being on the board at this point. Because I thought for multiple seasons, 3 years in the SEC, he was an outstanding cornerback in man coverage. Has all the traits that you want, the suddenness, the route recognition skill, the recovery ability, ball skills to be a first-round cornerback. He's still available. And then Andrew Booth is someone that was a big recruit at Clemson, flashed elite ball skills early in his career, and just moves around like a nickel corner, but he's got good size. He's just still available because he was injured. So one of those two, for ignoring team needs, and the Buccaneers at 33 overall, I think their first-round caliber talents still available on Friday.
Tied with the same number grid I have on these prospects with George Pickens is Greg Dulcich, the tight end out of UCLA. Big fan of him and what he brings to the table. He's George Kittle-like, in my opinion. And right underneath those guys probably fits perfectly for a Bucs need, and that's Logan Hall out of Houston, defensive lineman. He can play across the front.
Well, the Logan Hall thing is very interesting, and we talked about this. We did a quick arguably the fastest or the shortest Pick Six podcast in the history of the podcast. 20 minutes. Me, Josh, and Traps, and it was still 10 minutes longer than Debo wanted. Me, Josh, and Traps did a 20-minute sort of audio feed, get something in the feed, rumors and whatnot. And Logan Hall, at this point, it would be, I think, surprising if Logan Hall wasn't the 33rd overall pick. Do we have those odds? Debo, I'm scrolling through to see if they pulled him for the draft. Logan, not listed. Let me see if I can find the odds. It's weird. So in previous years, when you bet on the draft and you bet on draft props, they would hang them up there and they would sit there and you could basically do whatever you wanted and they wouldn't move a whole lot. This year, because it's become so widespread betting on the draft, and it's become a thing that basically every pregame show or every network and media outlet in some form or fashion is discussing. I mean, like, these things are moving like crazy. They're flying all around. The books are chasing steam, and particularly with second and third round picks, the second day, it's become extremely difficult because, like, I think when odds are thrown up about who's the first overall pick in the second round, or actually, here's a better example. Last night, I believe it was FanDuel listed Matt Corral's over under at, I think, 48.5 after the first round. Well, that thing got to no way it was 30. Yeah,
it's almost 60, right?
Yeah, it's like up to almost
like
60 right now. Like it moved 5 or 6 spots within a couple of hours, basically, but before people were waking up, because people were hammering the over, and these books are chasing the steam and trying to find a spot where people will, like a decision spot where people have to, they're not comfortable going one way or the other. To that extent, Logan Hall is minus 600 to be 33rd overall on FanDuel right now. Thank you to people in the chat, to Debo for sending it to me, and for the draft after dark chat for hollering at me as well. I got like 5 alerts on that. So I mean, it would be basically a huge surprise if Logan Hall wasn't 33rd overall. Josh, how do we feel about that as a pick for the Buccaneers in that spot?
I would love it. I mean, it gives them a little bit more of an attacking defensive front next to Vita Vea. I mean, he's a guy that has collapsed pockets. He's taken on blocks for his teammates. So to add more of a penetrating option next to him, you're just increasing and spreading the opposing offensive line thin. You're able to rush from different positions on the football field with a couple of very talented linebackers. You've got Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, who I thought was a very good pick for them in the first round last year. You throw in Logan Hall, and all of a sudden you've got one of the better defensive lines in the NFC.
Traps or Emery, Emery, you mentioned him, so I assume you like the idea of them grabbing him here, right?
Yeah, it just makes so much sense for Tampa, and it kind of keeps you. I don't know how. I feel like Vernon Golson is getting older. I don't know the exact age, but he would be the right replacement for him. And keep in mind, they hadn't re-signed Ndamukong Suh, so this is kind of a way to help fill that void.
One thing I would say on this too is crazy. This is minus 600 right now. Wasn't Travon Walker minus 500 to be the number 1 overall pick? Like the fact that it's like, should we be betting this? Should Breach throw down another $100 to win like $30 again, or like?
Do you want Breach to admit what he actually bet on Travon Walker?
Well, he didn't bet. He didn't bet what? He didn't bet 500.
He chickened out at the last second. He bet. What'd you bet? 100 or 20 to win? Risked 100 to win 20, right?
I'm $20 richer. That's all that matters.
I will say, like,
crazy. It's like for Logan Hall to have like higher odds than that right now, to be minus 600 when we kind of knew for like a day or two, or we thought we knew that Travon Walker was going to be the first overall pick. And like you mentioned, Will, the number 1 overall pick like should be like minus 10,000 or higher, and it usually is not. So Breach could have bet a couple $1,000s and won some money. I mean, I didn't do it, so I can't really speak about that. But
it's hard to lay a minus 500 line and feel really comfortable about it. Like, yeah, I bet over 1.5 safeties last night at minus 286, and
you were sweating.
I was kind of like about to get really upset because it would have wiped out a big chunk of my draft profit if it hadn't gone over.
Who saved you?
The Bengals did, I think.
Did
we see
cornerback Daxton Hill?
Well, did we see if Dax Hill got classified as a corner or a safety?
He got classified as a safety.
Okay. Lewis Cine was taking.
They go by what they played in college, not what they're going to play in the NFL, because you don't know for sure what the team's going to do.
We heard Goodell goes out there. He goes, defensive back Dax Hill. It's like, oh, come on. Like, you can't get me like that. So what's interesting about the Logan Hall stuff, I think, and it ties into Malik Willis, is that, and this is my Galaxy brain operation this afternoon, but there's been an insane amount of steam about Malik Willis going to the Giants. And we mentioned it briefly, when we were talking pre-show about it, but the rumor that was going around was the Giants were going to leapfrog the Titans and trade with the Vikings and take Malik Willis at 34. And at the time that this rumor started going around, the Giants were 32-1 to go, to draft Malik Willis. They're now like plus 250 or maybe plus 300 to draft Malik Willis. I think they're still the favorites. I'll double check that. Willis went from, I can't remember what the number was to go 34th overall, but it got down to minus 150 to go 34th overall. Now it's climbed back up to 4-1, all on sort of this people hammering Willis at 34, people hammering Willis to the Giants, et cetera, et cetera.
That's moving it more so than like any rumor coming out, right?
Right. But my theory on it is that a bunch of people called Tampa Bay and said, hey, would you like to trade down? We are trying to move up. But people trying to get Willis or trying to do whoever. And Tampa's like, no, we're good. We're staying here. And told a bunch of teams that. It gets out to, I don't know, like some, scout or some guy in, the personnel department knows another guy at another team. He's like, yeah, we're staying here. We're taking Logan Hall. And that's sort of where this rumor has sort of drifted out. And that's why he's gotten out to 600. And that's also why the Willis rumors have started to run pretty aggressively. Emory.
Well, real quick, Brinson, one thing I'll say to that is I do think, again, all the draft betting is new as far as legally doing it on a national scale. It's something that's come up over the last 2 years as more states have seen gambling legalized. And I do think even based on yesterday that the books are adjusting their numbers more quickly, because if they had a bunch of guys like me who went in and bet 100 or 200 or 300 once Trayvon Walker got the negative 500, they might not have paid out a lot, but they still lost that money. So you've got to move quickly. And if they felt like the same thing was happening with Logan Hall, you're going to go, all right, we're taking him from negative 300, 400. You're just shooting that number up to get people to stop betting it or to feel a lot more less secure about the bet. So it does feel like books are adjusting a little bit more quickly than maybe they would have even yesterday or in the past.
Yeah, to that extent. So I bet the Giants to draft Malik Willis at 32-1. By the time that I was able to just look at the odds again, it was down to 17-1. Nibbled a little bit there, and then it got down to 9-1, right? I wouldn't bet Malik Willis to the Giants at plus 250 like that. And that's why they move it. They're basically chasing this steam. And I was giving my buddy Anthony Amico crap, but what happened was on the Establish the Run, like betting live stream earlier today, they mentioned hitting Willis to the Giants at 9-1. And it just got, in 30 seconds, it was down to like 2.5-1 because it got just obliterated. So this is just books chasing steam. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is what's going to happen, right? I mean, Emory, you spend a lot of time in sports books, like CBS HQ is constantly sending you out to the book to hang out and talk on video. I mean, like, don't you think that's sort of what's happening here with the bookmakers?
Yeah, I feel like that's the case. I just find it fascinating, the whole betting aspect of everything. I remember being at the sports book in DC when the Saints were playing Washington, and where they have us set up. I'm hearing people have to walk up and a line starting to form. They have to walk up and place their bets at the kiosk or whatnot. And I'm ear hustling. I'm like, yo, you might as well just give me all that money that you put in the machine. That's a stupid bet. And so we're watching the game, and I mean they're betting like I was like, you guys legitimately thought that this dude wasn't going to throw over 2 interceptions. I think he had 4 that day, Heineke. You really thought James' longest completion was going to be under 20. Oh, what are you like? Wow.
You think Jameis ain't going to chuck one ball, like 10 balls up in the air? Like, come on, bro. Like, yeah.
It's amazing. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Traps, you're a big, everybody likes Malik Willis, but you've been pounding the table for Willis. What do you think about how, all right. So we have, let's say and there's, I think Aaron Wilson Breach put this in Slack, but Aaron Wilson of Pro Football Network says Travis Jones and Logan Hall amongst the top candidates to go to Tampa Bay. Let's say that happens. They go defensive player. It seems like it's going to happen. How would you see Malik Willis possibly fitting in with whether it's Minnesota who's been rumored or New York or Tennessee? And which one of those landing spots do you think would be best for Malik Willis?
I think the Giants, and it's kind of the low-hanging fruit, but the fact that Brian Daboll was not just like with Josh Allen for a season, but he was with rookie year Josh Allen, and then 2019 Josh Allen, and then MVP vote Josh Allen, and then last year he helped with the maturation process. And I think even if someone like Pete Prisco hates Malik Willis, doesn't see any comparison to Josh Allen, they did have pretty similar college careers, like the bad games against the Power 5 schools with a bunch of picks, trying to do too much. And to me, the arm talent is similar. I think Josh Allen has a little bit of a stronger arm. The running ability is certainly there. So I think we mentioned it earlier on that afternoon episode that to just be behind Daniel Jones, to be a second rounder, there wouldn't be immediate pressure where he needs to play right away. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll would still maybe get that at least half a year where it's like not a ton of push to start Malik Willis. And I think Brian Daboll would know how to deal with and develop a raw but uber talented quarterback in Malik Willis. So to me, the Giants, more so than any other team, would be a good scenario for the Giants and for Malik Willis to eventually mature and really reach his full potential at the NFL level.
Josh, your thoughts on Willis and those landing spots, I do think the Danny Dimes thing, and first of all, Danny Dimes is like great cover for Malik Willis to sit for a year if he can't beat Dimes in training camp, but he very well might. But two, I think it was Albert Breer wrote about this, and it's just I agree with the theory completely. And I've mentioned it before, but if you draft a quarterback in the top, the further down you draft the quarterback, the less pressure there is on the organization and the front office and the coaching staff and the quarterback himself to be the savior of the franchise, right?
I agree with that. But at the same time, I feel like we have built this narrative that Malik Willis is a first-round caliber player so much this offseason that it's going to be a quarterback controversy no matter which organization he walks into. So even with Daniel Jones being present in that building, I think from day one, there's going to be some pressure on him to perform. And there should be anyway. That's the whole purpose of this upcoming season, is to figure out who he is and whether or not he's going to be a long-term answer. My question is, why would you want to start your clock now as an organization? Why would you want to invest in a quarterback and have the ownership be able to say, hey, you took this guy, 2 years ago, he's not working out. You've got to be held accountable for that. I would rather see what Daniel Jones does this season, draft another position of need, and then come back into next year's draft class if you truly feel that he is not the answer for your franchise.
Emery, do you I know this is kind of it's not even a loaded question, it's like a hard question, but because we don't know what the quarterback, we don't know how the quarterbacks are going to look coming into next year. Sam Howell was the presumptive number 1 pick coming into last year. So it's a difficult question, but if you're the Giants, if you're playing GM for the Giants, are you thinking, all right, there's Willis is maybe not. Are you interested in potentially taking Willis here, or would you prefer to wait for next year?
Taking Willis, because we are all on a 1-year job basis. The NFL, you never know, man. We've seen guys get up out the paint after one season, and I'm tired of looking at Daniel Jones fumble the football, throw intercepts, take sacks, get hurt, and have no backup plan. Well, this year they bring in Tyrod Taylor, who's going to help be that solid backup in case Daniel Jones goes down. And at worst, you bring in Malik Willis, and he is Tyrod Taylor. You get rid of Tyrod Taylor next year, you have Malik Willis as your backup. It is no harm, no foul. No one really has problem with competition except the quarterback position. You look down the road in your division in Philly, they drafted a quarterback in the second round who could care less about competition and beat out the presumptive, number 2 overall pick, shipped him out on packing. Why? Because he is a competitor. I would bring in Malik Willis. It helps out your run game. If I'm Tennessee, I'm looking at Malik Willis too. Pair Malik Willis up with, Derrick Henry. He'll have 2,000 yards for the rest of his career because of the run threat of Malik Willis. So it's all benefit, in my opinion, if they bring in Willis. It helps Saquon out. But it also gives them the luxury, hey, you have a buffer in between Daniel Jones and Malik Willis is Tyrod Taylor.
One final thing that I want to say on this. Oh, no, John, go ahead.
I think that Tennessee actually makes the most sense. I know that we're talking about the Giants right now, but you look at, Daniel Jones is a 6th overall pick. You're not picking up his option. I'm at least seeing how far he'll take you and giving him this season to kind of figure things out. And if he doesn't, and Brinson, we've talked about this before, if you're Brian Daboll, or if you're the new coaching staff, the new general manager, you're thinking, you know what? If Daniel Jones pans out, then we're set. We look brilliant because we turned him around and we did things with Daniel Jones that the prior coaching staff couldn't do. And if he flops, then you just bought yourself a free year because you tried to make this top 6 quarterback work. And now you go out and get another quarterback and you're starting back from scratch, but it's not your fault Daniel Jones didn't work. You were trying to make someone else's quarterback work. So it seems like there's no downside to letting Daniel Jones being the starting quarterback in 2022. But I totally agree with what Emery said about Malik Willis going to a team like the Titans. You have Ryan Tannehill, whose contract expires after the season. So you can let Willis sit theoretically. But if he beats Tannehill out in training camp, I'm sure half of Tennessee would be thrilled with the way Tannehill played in 2021 and the way the Titans season ended with 3 interceptions in the playoff game against the Bengals. And yeah, that's going to help Derrick Henry a bunch to have a quarterback that mobile. I mean, Ryan Tannehill is a little bit mobile, which helps that offense a lot. And you throw in Malik Willis, who's 10 times more mobile than Derrick Henry, then I think that helps Tennessee. So I would say that the Titans and
not Derrick Henry.
What?
Right? Nope. Malik Willis. You said Malik Willis is 10 times more mobile than Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah, than Tannehill. Yeah. Maybe
he is more mobile.
Maybe he's more mobile than Derrick Henry too, but yeah, than Tannehill. So I would say that if you're looking at the teams that probably could use Malik Willis the most, I would put Tennessee and maybe the Falcons at the top of the list.
One last point on this. I think at this point, it should be a no-brainer for any of these teams. We're always talking about, next year, the quarterback class, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, whoever it may be, Will Levis from Josh's Kentucky program. How about the fact that last year, the 49ers traded their first-round pick last year, a first-round pick this year, a third-round pick, and 2023's first-rounder for Trey Lance. Is Trey Lance that much better of a prospect than Malik Willis? You can get Malik Willis right now in the top of the second round. I know Trey Lance had that no interception, 28 touchdown final season at the FCS level, but he was raw. He was a big arm quarterback that was a really good runner. He's a little bit taller than Malik Willis. At this point, you just have to look at almost the opportunity cost that you can get Malik Willis in round 2, cheaper contract, less pressure. We just had a team trade a ton to get Trey Lance, and I thought they were pretty similar. They graded almost identically in my scouting grade book. So just from that point alone, I feel like it's worth it for any of these clubs that, even if they're not sure that Malik Willis is the guy, compared to last year, you get him for a lot cheaper than what the 49ers had to pay to get Trey Lance.
Yeah, I mean, if you were like, hey, do you want Trey Lance or Malik Willis and 3 first-round picks? I'm probably taking Malik Willis every day of the week. I mean,
exactly,
just because of what you could get with that, like you mentioned, the opportunity cost. The Titans definitely fit, and I think that's also why there was a bunch of buzz and steam and chatter and whatnot about the Giants jumping the Titans with the Vikings. Because let's say if you're the Vikings and you want Andrew Booth, the corner out of Clemson, which has been the rumor they'll take him at 34. I mean, you can probably get him at 36. Maybe the Titans snipe you, but it's worth it to move back 2 spots. You get an extra 4th-round pick from the Giants. They get Willis. I think there's a chance the Titans could take Desmond Ridder at 35. Like Luke Fickell and Mike Vrabel are literally best friends. And Mike Vrabel just did that like awkward, I'm so mad I'm going to stomp around the draft room because you traded A.J. Brown. Like, what are we doing here, people? Move last night. They added Treylon Burks, which is great, but it's like, if you're the Titans, you feel like you got worse at the wide receiver position than you were 24 hours ago. And so maybe they throw Mike Vrabel a bone and draft Desmond Ridder, knowing that Ryan Tannehill probably, just with 1 year left on his deal. All right, let's take some chat questions. What teams are most likely, from Andrew Webster, what teams are most likely to trade into the first 10 picks of the second round? So the first 10 picks of the second round, the Bucks at 33, Vikings 34, Titans 35, all teams traded to get there. Giants at 36, Texans at 37, Jets at 38, Bears at 39, and then Seahawks at 40 and 41. Josh, your thoughts on who might move, and I'll even throw in this caveat too. You may count the Seahawks if they package picks to move up as a team that moves into the top 10.
Yeah, I did think about the Seahawks, but I kind of moved off of them. I'm actually going to say the Packers. They haven't addressed the wide receiver position yet. So if they really like one of those players at the top of the second round, use one of those 2 second-round picks to move up and get a guy that you really like and end all of the discussion that you have done nothing to support Aaron Rodgers this offseason.
Breach, thoughts on that?
I think that we could absolutely see that. You can't not pick a receiver in the second round, or Aaron Rodgers might quit the team. I'm sure he was understanding about yesterday. You have 6 receivers go before you make your pick at 22, and you don't want to be taking 7th best receiver in the draft in the first round at 22. So it seems like Rodgers was understanding of that, but I don't think he's going to be very understanding if they don't get a receiver at some point today, whether that is the second round or the third round. And when you look at where they pick, you've got to get up if you want the best guys. And they're at 53. They're in that perfect spot. They've got 2 second-round picks. You package those together, and you get up into the top 10. Another team, maybe the Broncos make a move. They haven't made a pick yet. If there's someone they like. And then, again, all this quarterback talk, all this chatter just adds a layer of drama because quarterbacks, people like trading up for quarterbacks. And maybe the Lions, they're at 46. Maybe they try to move up a few spots to get a quarterback. So seems like there's a few teams who would be interested in trading up.
Emery, sorry, I just got totally lost.
How about
my wife was having a flight delay and texting me about it and was like, and I got kind of spaced out there. Sorry.
I'm gonna say Baltimore. Baltimore has 8 4th-round picks. You can package 7 of those and get up at the top of the second
That's
round.
nuts. That's Eric DaCosta.
Oh, that's true. Right. He made package and move down. Like, you can get up into the top part of the second round and take George Pickens. Now you'll be pushing it because you can only have 3 guys like Pickens and Peters on your team. You got 2. If you get Pickens and you got Peters, you might get 1 more, and then there's mutiny after that. But getting up to get Pickens after what happened yesterday with Marquise Brown, I think you can ease the sting a little bit by getting one of the top wide receivers, and you have grab bag full of 4th-round picks because there's not enough room on a roster to make 8 selections in the 4th round.
Yeah, how about the Chiefs? Has anyone said that yet? I think the fact that they have 2 second-round picks, they like the Packers. Everyone mocked double receivers to them in round 1, or they'll at least pick when they trade up for a small corner in Trent McDuffie, pick George Karlaftis. I like that. The second pick, especially, they still need a wide receiver, and they could certainly let the draft fall to them. But if they love a George Pickens that does kind of have that X wide receiver upside as a wide receiver 1 in this offense, it wouldn't shock me if Brett Veach, who's certainly not afraid or timid about making trades, if the Chiefs were actually a team that they love Sky Moore, if they love George Pickens or Jalen Tolbert or one of those wide receivers, if they make their move relatively early in the first or in the second round in those first couple picks tonight.
I know that the Texans are already picking with like the 5th overall pick in the top 10. So this is kind of a cheater answer, but like I saw somebody from the Houston Chronicle pointing out that they have a ton of 4th-round picks as well. Like maybe not 7, but a lot. And they will probably consider consolidating those and moving back up again because the roster is ripe to bring on undrafted free agents. Like this is like, if you're an undrafted free agent, Houston is a spot for you because there is going to be more opportunity than maybe on other teams to try and get a job. So they don't like Emery was saying, you don't, it's sort of like the Ravens, but kind of opposite. You don't want to have 8 7th-round picks, right? Like you want to consolidate the talent, maybe get some earlier guys and then bring in those undrafted guys and just see what you can find, knowing that you're not necessarily competing for 2022. My wife is now stuck somewhere in Florida on a plane, and they're stuck because of weather. She says they're not letting us off the plane. We're about to mutiny, so that's going well.
There you go.
Don't go to Florida. I tell you, don't go to Florida.
Florida is the mutiny capital of the world, Brinson.
Yeah.
Everyone.
What?
The mutiny capital of the world.
That's probably accurate.
Yeah, of course. Have you ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean? Half the movie's about mutinies.
But I'm not sure that took place in Florida.
It's Caribbean. It's Florida.
Florida really more
near
United States.
Yeah.
In
no,
Caribbean.
no, Florida when that movie was in the times where Pirates of the Caribbean is supposed to take place.
It's a good thing that you told everybody last night that you keep your entire house on Eastern time and force your family to live on Eastern time. So that way, this is like
that was so awesome.
The second weirdest thing you could have possibly said. Miller Kepsel asked, Should the Lions take a quarterback at 46 if one they like falls, or draft a different position of need? Josh, quarterback for the Lions at 46. And I mean, or will there be a quarterback there? You know, like, I'd be curious to see how many quarterbacks are taken between 33 and 46.
I would be interested in possibly taking either Malik Willis or Desmond Ridder if they were available, just because I think you get a trial year with that player knowing that Jared Goff is going to be on the roster. I don't necessarily think that a Sam Howell or a Matt Corral represents a significant upgrade over Jared Goff. So I'm not necessarily inclined to take a chance on that player knowing that I could always come back into next year's markets to possibly take a quarterback.
Emery, sorry, I should be better at directing traffic here.
Oh no, I agree. I agree with Josh. Like at the end of the day, if it's one of those two, sure. But if not, you know, is it really pushing the needle to, you know, for next year with this guy you're taking that doesn't have the athletic upside? You might as well just get better on the 53 and then, you know, punt to next year, or wait till round 7 to swing for the fences for someone like Cole Kelly out of southeastern Louisiana. You swing for the fence for someone that, man, let me just see what this dude can do in the preseason and kind of like just roll with him, you know, stash him and develop him, but don't waste a pick in round 2 on someone not Ridder or Willis, or maybe even Sam Howell.
I also think they have a roster that is ready-made on the offensive side of the ball that could sustain a player like Desmond Ridder or Malik Willis. They have a quality offensive line that would allow time for a quarterback to kind of learn how to process and what they're seeing from the opposing defense. I think that would be a good situation for one of these quarterbacks to walk into, but I would be very selective with who I potentially brought into the organization.
Breach, do you think this is sort of something that gets like debated amongst like Lions Twitter or whatever? And by the way, I saw a video. David Tepper gave a fan a high five and was like, "Hey, Panthers Twitter, you know, cut me some slack every now and then, like, you know, and let's not forget to come out of our basement and like get some sunshine." It's like, what are you doing? Why would you say that, David Tepper? Are you an idiot? Like, don't rile up Panthers Twitter. Like, sure, it's kind of funny, but God, man, you don't need that joke. You're lucky you drafted Icky, otherwise I'd be on you. Breach, there's a Lions Twitter thinks that the Lions might like Jared Goff. Do you buy or sell the idea that they like Jared Goff enough to just keep passing on quarterbacks?
I buy it. It seemed like at some point last season that we saw Dan Campbell maybe get a little fed up with Goff, and he kind of called him out in a couple press conferences. And then it felt like that Goff kind of stepped up to the plate, started playing better, and that he kind of built a better relationship with Campbell. I mean, yes, the Lions didn't have a great season, obviously going 3-13-1, but you just look at how they closed out the season. I think they won 3 games after December 1st, so it was their last 6 games. They went 3-3 last 6 weeks of the season, and they were beating good teams. I mean, they beat the Cardinals. They had that shocking win over Arizona. I mean, I don't know. I'd call the Green Bay win good because Green Bay was benching half their starters. But they beat a Vikings team that was still in the playoff race, needed the win. So they were good wins. And it does feel like, you know, that's not necessarily going to keep them from drafting a quarterback. But I think they're happy and content with Goff as their starter going into next season. So maybe if Willis or a Ridder falls to them at 46, they do it. But I don't think we'll see them trade up to get a quarterback.
I think you can go back to the initial trade because we had heard that Carolina made an offer of a top 10 pick. So if Detroit turned down a top 10 pick to take this amalgamation of late first round picks from the Los Angeles Rams instead of this top 10 pick, that's just negligence. So, I mean, to do that kind of suggests that they actually value Jared Goff at the quarterback position. So I think there's actually some truth to it.
Okay. What else we got from the chat? Dominic asked, where does Ojabo go? Somebody hit me up a minute ago. It was like, can we get Ojabo at like 24-1 to go 34th overall? Too early? Whoever wants it.
See, I did a day 2 mock draft, and it was hard to find a spot for him because it's like a lot of the teams that I felt like had an edge need they're not really in a situation where they're like, yeah, you might not play as a rookie. It feels like that would almost have to be the case. I mean, he could have a Cam Akers-esque recovery from this Achilles and maybe play later in the season. And his talent is certainly there. And Emery can speak to that, but it was hard for me. I'm trying to see where I had him going. I had him at like the last pick of the second round to the Denver Broncos. And they're kind of a team that could use the edge rushing help after losing Von Miller in the middle of last season, trading him to the Rams. But it was hard for me early in round 2, where I think teams are still looking for impact guys, like week 1 impact guys, for those teams to pick David Ojabo.
Hear me out on this one and follow my train of thought. If you look at a team's too deep and you look at, wow, they have a lot of talent, top end, second string, third string, or whatnot. They had a great draft. They're winning the media right now. The Jets, they're right there. They can take them and stash them. Like, if you look at their too deep on paper, they have more pound for pound talent than the Patriots do. So they can, again, double down on edge rushers, because that was a sore spot for them last year. You get Carl Lawson back. You drafted Jermaine Johnson. So you don't need Ojabo to play right now. You can nurse him back to health. And now you come out in 2023 with 2 of the top edge rushers from the previous draft class, and now you're cooking with grease. I think that's a good spot because they pick early enough to where you don't want to see the free fall. I think they can make that. They probably would be more inclined to make that pick and then ride off into the sunset, and Joe Douglas can just, wear the Monopoly hat and the monocle and be on his way.
I like the
You're
idea.
going to build Joe Douglas a statue.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I tell you what, like Jets and Giants fans are the happiest they've been since the last time their teams had multiple first. Well, even like when Gettleman had first round picks, they weren't happy, right? Like they were like Daniel Jones and was it Daniel Jones and
DeAndre Baker they traded back in to get
Baker and
Lawrence,
Dexter Lawrence, who I love as a player, but it's just Dave Gettleman style stuff. What else we got from the chat? Do you think the Jets take a running back in the second round? Running backs should be interesting here, Traps. Like, what are we going to see? How early are these guys going to start coming off the board? Brees Hall and Kenneth Walker likely the first. I will say that, again, like it's probably just reactionary steam, but James Cook went from 14-1 to 4-1 to be the first running back off the board. Brees Hall is still like minus 280 or something like that. So maybe he's obviously the likely guy to go. How many running backs do we see early? Do the Jets get one, and who's the first one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Brees Hall. That's just the odds-on favorite. That's what it's felt like for a long time. It wouldn't be shocking if we see Ken Walker a few picks after that. And then I think I said it on yesterday's preview show. Usually at the running back spot, there's like a kind of a surprise name that, like, for the longest time we thought, oh, it's going to be Brees Hall, then Ken Walker, then Isaiah Spiller. That's how I had them ranked, or I actually had Spiller ahead of Brees Hall. But I don't necessarily think it's going to fall that way. And I don't know if James Cook will be the first off the board, but someone like him or Zamir White or Pierre Strong, I'm probably forgetting someone. It's such a deep running back class. It wouldn't shock me if there's a quote unquote surprise name that goes in round 2. I don't think we're going to see, 8 running backs go today, but we could see a handful of them. Like you mentioned, the Jets, the Texans at 37 might be a little bit too early. I wouldn't be shocked if the Saints, given Alvin Kamara's age, look at the running back position as well. There's certainly teams that would be logical that have either a clear-cut need or a quasi need at the running back spot. And this is where I think the league understands that even the top-tier running backs should be valued in today's NFL.
I think Albert was actually reading my mind, because that's the only reason I was going to push back on Emery's comments, because it would kill my dream of pairing Brees Hall with Michael Carter. I think that would be a fantastic pairing and give them a little bit more juice in that wide zone scheme. So that's kind of a personal scenario I would love to see, but Ojabo would make a lot of sense for them as well.
I mean, the running back position is, when you look at their depth chart, you talk about Carter. He's a given, and he's explosive. He's a jitterbug. Love Carter. I had him graded higher than Javonte Williams last year. But when you look at that depth chart, you look at, a lot of injury history the rest of the way. The kid you got from Tevin Coleman, then you got P. Brown. All those guys been banged up and injured, and you want to ask yourself, if they want to go with Breece Hall or Isaiah Spiller type, or did they want another guy that's very similar to what the depth chart looks like? So that puts James Cook in play. That puts Pierre Strong in play. Guys that are just like Carter that can make you miss, but also doesn't need volume. So that when you take Carter out, you don't lose much when you put that other guy in. So it's fascinating because they do need an RB2, in my opinion. So that's a great question. That's a position that you could look at and say, oh, yeah, they need somebody.
Emory, does anybody on this list really stand out to you as somebody who fits that Shanahan style, zone blocking, one cut and get upfield type of runner?
My RB1, Jayshon Corbin. I'm a big fan of Jayshon. Feet, eyes, hands, vision, all of that works together in unison. He's his own blocker. He's got the speed. My goodness, he is someone that they don't even have to take in round 2. They could probably wait a little bit and get him, and he'd be the perfect complement to Michael Carter.
I dig it. Breach. You got to lay minus 286 on Breece Hall, first running back?
This is just no, never, because one of you guys just talked about how different teams view different running backs just so differently that Breece Hall might be the number 1 guy on Team A's chart, but he might be the 4th best running back on Team B's chart. And that's one of those, I don't care where that number goes. And even if Brinson promised me he was going to be the 33rd pick, I would not lay the negative 285.
I promised you that Trayvon Walker was going to be the number 1 pick.
And you came
lay minus 500.
I'm saying I wouldn't listen if it was a running back involved. But thanks again for that, Brinson. I bought myself some Chick-fil-A with that money.
I hope you bought enough to eat the next day too.
Yep, microwave it, man. So delicious.
The
other thing you have to consider real quick is just what teams need running backs. We're talking about the Jets and pairing with Michael Carter, but the Jets might be thinking, we already have Michael Carter. Why not wait till the 3rd or 4th round to get a running back? Because we talk about all the time about running backs are easy to find, and so teams are afraid to draft them high at this point. So it will be interesting to see who's willing to pull the trigger on a running back in the 2nd round. I feel like the Bills seem like a logical team, but there aren't many other teams where you say they need to draft a running back in the 2nd round. It just feels like maybe it would be a reach to take one at that point, even though there are definitely 2 or 3 running backs who are obviously deserving of a 2nd round pick and talented enough to be a 2nd round pick.
All right. If there are any thoughts actually somebody asked in the chat thoughts on Isaiah Spiller as the 2nd running back taken today, 6-1 on the board. So we're looking at not counting Breece Hall, likely the first running back, but even if it's James Cook, anybody think Isaiah Spiller at 6-1 2nd running back good value? That feels a little like I'd probably want a little bit more for that, I think, just because of the consensus might not matter, but just the way people view Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall and then James Cook, I think I'd probably want more than that, but I could be wrong.
These same people also view SEC as everything, right? And they'll say, well, he did beat Colorado with a deep ball down the middle down the sideline, or he almost helped them beat Arkansas, come back in that game. Teams will view, he ran through Florida. They'll view the SEC. Well, he did against the best competition. And that may be the surprise, him going ahead of Breece Hall because of that whole SEC pedigree.
Is Isaiah Spiller? Oh, he's only 11-1 to be the first running back drafted.
Wow.
So
he's kind of hard to peg because he didn't work out at the combine, Isaiah Spiller, and then that Texas A&M Pro Day they were like running in molasses, like everyone ran super slow. So it feels like I think on film he's up there with Kenneth Walker as the best running back in this class, but it's like hard to peg. Our teams just like throwing out the pre-draft process for Isaiah Spiller and watching the film, or feels like some teams will say, hey, like he ran in I believe he ran in the 4.6s or high 4.5s when you have Breece Hall with the 40-inch vertical running high 4.3s. I don't think Breece Hall plays that much faster than Isaiah Spiller. But to your point, well, I think 6-1 and then 11-1. I'd want it a little bit more. Solid value, but not like outstanding. You need to make a bet on it right now for Isaiah Spiller with either of those 2 bets.
Yeah, I'm probably staying away from those. Let me ask you tight ends. Trey McBride is minus 400 or so to be the first tight end taken. Josh, is there anybody at like another tight end? I mean, I see Greg Dulcich at plus 350. Field is plus 350. That's like the next closest one. Jeremy Ruckert is 11-1, and then Jelani Woods 8-1. Is there any chance we see anybody other than Trey McBride? And feel free to answer over or under Trey McBride, 46.5 draft position. So first, 13 picks of the second round.
I would definitely be more inclined to go with the Field as opposed to Trey McBride there, just because I think there is not going to be a consensus among teams at the tight end position. I could see a lot of teams valuing Greg Dulcich and what he's able to do out of the slot more than what Trey McBride is capable of doing. So for that reason, it's all about team fit and who comes to the clock first. So I would be leaning in that direction. As to 46.5, I think it's going to be over. Tampa Bay is a team that I would have thought might be in the market for a tight end, but they're going to go defensive tackle, it sounds like, early. So I don't know that there's that many teams that are going to take a tight end between when the Buccaneers pick and 47 overall.
What say you, Emery?
What's Jalen Watermeyer's number?
Ooh,
Interested.
He feels like he's a day 3 guy.
Because I'm
That could be good value, is what I'm saying.
25-1. First tight end taken.
Wow. That's fascinating, because when you watched him during the season, he was like Martellus Bennett. But, he ran a 9 in the 40-yard dash. There's no interest in blocking. Like, it was just all going downhill. But I feel like some coaches are arrogant. Like,
you're getting 35. You're getting 35 Brinson bucks on that. I'll tell you that.
Right.
25-1.
I may sprinkle something on that just based off the tape and not the post-season process. But that's interesting. But I would stay away from the tight end position because it's so volatile. Based off what Josh said, you don't know what teams use what and who needs what,
Yeah,
and one weird thing real quick about the tight end position is that literally, you said McBride's over-under was 46.5, right, Brinson?
Yeah.
There has only been one draft this century where a tight end wasn't picked by the 46th pick. So,
wow. That's probably why they said it like that, honestly.
20 out of 21 drafts where you've got a guy taken in the top 46, a tight end. And so that's also what makes it weird, because it feels like tight end has always been, we talked about running back, how, teams evaluate them all differently. And, we got Emery talking about a guy who's 25-1, and that feels like there's at least a small chance he could be the first tight end because teams evaluate tight end so differently. So I feel like we'll see one in the top 50, but who knows who it would be. Yeah,
that's a good point. Breach, do you have a prop that you want to give out? Am I told that the Matt Araiza draft prop?
Yes. My God.
Has this gotten steamed all the way up to 128.5?
So I handed this out. I gave out draft props in the newsletter on Thursday, and at that point, the over/under on Matt Araiza was 114.5. I said take the over. There was a few reasons. The biggest reason, the thing with Matt Araiza right now, at 120.5, I'm a little mixed because you're getting midway through the 4th round. And I do feel like he's going to go late 4th round, early 5th round. But the biggest question about Matt Araiza, and it's what teams are going to want to know, and you won't know until he's on your team, is whether or not he can hold. If you draft a punter in the 4th round and he shows up and he cannot hold the football, you're in trouble. And you're not going to know he can hold until he's in a game, because doing it in practice, doesn't do anything. And he's never really had to practice or do holding because he was the place kicker at San Diego State. And you might think holding's not a big deal, but you look at Corey Bjorquez, who punted for the Packers last season, who punted for the Bills. Traps, you probably remember that a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Well, you look at the Bills kicker in 2019, great season. 2020 with Bjorquez, horrible numbers. And you're thinking, one off. Then Bjorquez goes to Green Bay. Mason Crosby did not miss a field goal in the entire 2020 season. Bjorquez is his holder in 2021. Boom, 68% or something horrible. And so that is the big question with Matt Araiza. And I think I would still take the over, especially at the plus money. Although I will say my number one prop right now that I still have on the table is the Rams at 25-1 to take a punter with their first pick in the draft, which is at 104. The odds were crazy enough. They need a punter. They did sign Riley Dixon, but I think they would happily take Araiza. They know him well because he was just down the street from LA down in San Diego. And so But if I had to bet that prop right now, I would take the over.
Can a riser throw though?
That's a good. You can't run the fake punt. The Rams don't want you. That is true.
Sam Howell. Is there any chance he goes kind of early?
60s?
60s? Ooh. Yeah, I'm trying to
Well,
find
that's where his over-under is, right?
I'm trying to find some freaking over-unders, man. You can't. They're being pulled left and right. Oh, what we got here? Sam Howell over under 59.5.
Who's
let's say there, Traps.
I think there's a chance of it because, and I said this before, I think earlier this week on the podcast, that all these quarterbacks, a lot of them are older in this draft class, and Sam Howell's 21 years old, and he was starting as a freshman at 19, had a great freshman season, the big sophomore season at 20. Obviously a down year. You could say, hey, like, was he being elevated by Daz Newsome and Dimey Brown and those two running backs, or did he just, show what he can do with a quality receiver group, and then he didn't have it, and that's why he had the down season? I could see Sam Howell with the big arm and the fact that he's still young being picked under this. I mean, I think in my mock that I did this morning, like half asleep, I had him going later, but because of his age and because he's more experienced than most 21-year-old quarterbacks coming into the NFL in a draft class that has a bunch of 22, 23, 24-year-old quarterbacks, I could see him maybe not being the first quarterback pick tonight, but going a little bit earlier, maybe going ahead of Matt Corral, maybe going ahead of Desmond Ridder. So I at this point would kind of lean toward the under there at 59.5.
Remember, you a Sam Howell guy?
A little bit. I can get I can be talking to Sam Howell a little bit, but I was just thinking, like, man, it'd be a dope spot for Sam Howell. The Rams. The Rams would be a dope spot for Sam Howell. I feel, and also quietly, but it'll never happen, the Cardinals. That would be another dope spot for Sam Howell. But the Rams, to me, seem like the most ideal spot. You have an aging quarterback. Howell, can.
Steve Keim's first draft pick ever as GM. Steve Keim, former NC State football player. He drafted a Carolina player, Jonathan Cooper, with his first pick, and the guy blew out his leg in training camp, like in preseason. Like, I don't know, Steve. Stay away from the heels.
But I feel like Sam
I agree.
Is a decent man. He's decent, but there's so limited starting spots, right? There was only the one team that needed a quarterback, took the quarterback, maybe Carolina. But I mean, I feel like you're looking at, okay, who can, hold a backup right now? And I feel like the Rams would be a great spot. Who's their backup? Exactly.
Is it still Walford?
Somebody's holding up a jersey out there,
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing too is like, Stafford's missed time. Like, he played all 16 games, but let's not act like that's the norm for Matthew Stafford. Maybe you develop a guy, and Stafford's probably got 4 years left. So,
and he's young to Chris's point, he's super young.
Yep. That makes sense. Josh, you enter out of Sam Howell here.
Oh, that's a tough number, but I would actually lean towards the under because there are so many teams that could take a quarterback with multiple picks here in the second round. The Falcons, the Seahawks. I mean, the Titans have a pick there. The Giants have a pick there. Washington has a pick there. There's a number of teams that could pull him off the board, especially if we see another quarterback or two taken before that. And we don't know how motivated Aaron Rodgers is anymore. Maybe Green Bay needs to take another quarterback to light the fire under him again here in the second round.
If they draft Sam Howell before they draft a wide receiver, what are we doing? That would be absolutely outrageous. I mean, people are mad too about come on, they didn't draft a wide receiver in round one. Of course, we're going to get our jokes off. What do you think we're going to do? Like, I mean, nobody needs your stupid hot take about Aaron Rodgers. It's like, dude, if they didn't draft a wide receiver, you had to know what was coming from a joke perspective on Twitter. Like, no one was going to be like, well, a very prudent decision by the Packers not to draft a wide receiver. They have Alan Lazard and Jimmy Watkins. Everything's fine here. I mean, come on. We do it. Yeah, I think Sam Howell will be better than where he's gonna his draft slot. And the dude was gonna be like the first pick until he lost. Until Carolina sucked and he lost a couple offensive linemen and some weapons in the NFL, which it happens.
I know we didn't mention Matt Corral at all. What was his over under?
That's a good question.
Sorry to bring up something randomly out of the blue because I feel like
I needed 90 seconds to kill, so thank you. That was
okay. just helping out whenever I can, Brinson.
I was gonna end the show early, and then you didn't. I was just be like,
I feel like the Falcons could be
they took
possible
everything off
for him. And so then you might see him as maybe the second quarterback off the board in the second round. You have Willis or Ritter go first, and then Corral second to the Falcons.
I think Prisco, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think Prisco has maybe said that Corral's got some like just stuff off the field, not necessarily anything,
Is it the Wayne Gretzky thing? Because that should have put him in the first round.
The what?
The Wayne Gretzky son thing. You guys didn't hear about that?
No, huh?
No.
Why he left the high school?
No.
He fought Wayne Gretzky's son.
No, and he got basically
This is
tossed
Matt
out of
Corral?
school.
Yeah, Matt Corral knocked him out because
Wayne Gretzky called the school, was like, Matt Corral's gone.
but Corral didn't like the pretentious nature of the school that they were at in the high end California area. Where a lot of celebrities' kids go, and he just was he was frustrated. Just like, to me, that's like, hey man, he should have went to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Like,
or like I guess that's why he went to Ole Miss with Blaine. Like that makes total sense.
It makes
Well,
much sense.
he's not going to the Rams because he will not be embraced in Los Angeles.
Right, that's right.
Exactly.
I will say that like Matt Corral's outfit pre-draft on Thursday was like, are you like a former like preacher's kid who did a bunch of meth and now is like doing low end porn in LA on the side? Like, what's going on here?
It did look like that.
This outfit.
We were so close to wrapping this up.
I know. 2 full days of like good content, good wholesome quality content. I once got in trouble for making a joke about meth and Tennessee coaching searches on Twitter. True story. Anyway, that'll do it for Friday's pregame show. Hope everybody has a fantastic Friday night. Let's hashtag Lion Giants take Malik, because the Giants are clearly liars. They're not linked to Malik. Let's go. Let's get Malik Willis early to the Giants. Let's cash these tickets. Hope everyone enjoys Friday night. For Josh, for Breach, for Traps, for Emery, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. We will see you guys after the draft.